Hi guys, and welcome to another tutorial here in our community. Today is a pretty short video about another feature of Make, which is handling errors. This is quite useful, especially as we are building more and more automations. Of course, sometimes they can break, can give errors, passing the information, the data, and handling those errors is actually pretty useful because you can tell Make and the scenario to make other stuff or just to ignore or just to continue or even go to another module or to another app if there is an error. And I wanted to show you today a little bit which error handling there is in Make. So this is a basic tutorial. If you don't know a lot of Make, please just go and check the other videos here on this particular category because it's all about knowing Make and how to use Make. And this is another basic tutorial for you guys as well. So this is pretty simple. I have here on the screen just a super basic set just to show you the errors. So basically what I did is I just created a variable here which is in a JSON format, which is pretty used with APIs and on make.com. So that will be another video as well talking about JSON. So just check that one out. But basically what I did was just parsing that JSON, and then I didn't put anything yet on this Google Sheet because I just want to tell you the different types of error. Okay, so for example, if I run all just these two, you will see that it will run correctly. Okay, because there is actually a proper JSON and it parsed the JSON. So basically, as you guys can see, it grabs the name and the job title of the string, right? However, if I just want to run this module only and I put just like test, which is not the JSON string, of course, it will give an error, right? As you guys can see. So every time you have an error on a module, you will get this. Most of the times you also get an email, so that's kind of cool. You can actually put an error handling sending an email to you, but most of the times you get an email saying, hey, there is an error on a make automation that you're running, please go check it, and this is how you check it, okay? So to check an error, it will be on red, okay, and it will stop here, so it will not continue, or it can continue, I'll show you in a second, but you need just to click here on the little glass, and you can see here, okay, it says source is not a valid JSON. Of course, I didn't put the JSON code. An expected token test is not valid, okay, because I just put it. So you can actually pretty much only with this you can actually see what was the error. Sometimes it says the API key is not correct. It says no data found or something around those lines. So I will say that they made a really cool job to actually handle errors for you. Of course, if there is an error that you cannot fix this, you can also put on our community and we will help you out, or you can actually go here to this help section and just share with them, and they actually have a pretty fast support, so that's kind of a plus for make.com. But basically you can read it here, okay, there is no errors. But now you can actually, instead of just waiting here and stops here and so on, you can actually handle errors. And the errors I will put down below this video, this link, which is quite useful. This is the types of error handlings you can do. Okay, so you can break, commit, ignore, resume, and roll back. Okay, I'll probably say that I most of the time, 90% of the time, I only use two, which is the ignore and the break. Okay, but I wanna share with you guys the other ones. Okay, so let me just quickly remove this so you don't get any notifications. But it's really simple. Okay, so if you come here, okay, there is an error. If you click on the right side of the mouse, it says add error handler, okay? You can do this in every single module, okay? And if you click here, it will appear on these like this, so even the little dots are different, not on color, okay? And as you can see, it automatically opens up all the error handlings that you can choose, right? So it has the break, the commit, the ignore, the resume and rollback, as I told you. And let me explain you one by one again to understand. Some of them I don't even use it and they are quite difficult to understand, but when you start using a lot, you actually just use one or two, so that's totally fine. Okay, so let's start. I'll probably say let's start with the resume, for example, or as I said, you can actually go back and so on. I will just tell that the top two that we don't use is commit and rollback. So first of all, rollback, basically this one is the most difficult to understand. It's basically just used for triggers that have an ACID mode, so basically triggers that are instantly, okay. And rollback, basically, as it states here, you can go back and see it. It actually stops the scenario and goes back to that trigger, okay. And you can change a little bit what the trigger is all about, but it needs to be an ACID kind of trigger. So it's kind of difficult. I never use it, to be honest. As you can see here, only ACID modules. So basically it's not usable. I'll say only if you use, like as I said, a lot of ACID triggers and databases. So we don't kind of use this one, okay? But as I said, basically what it does is just rolls back to the trigger again, and you can put another kind of data in there. Okay, so again, not super useful for us, but you can just test it out. Again, we don't use it, and it only works on ACID modules. The second one and the other one is basically, let me just another one here, which is the commit one, and the commit one is mostly for databases. So if you don't use databases inside of Make, and to be honest, I don't use a lot. We use Google Sheets and just to transfer data and to put the data on it. But if you use the MSQL and databases and data stores, as you can see here on the left side, this commit can be useful. Basically, what happens is that it goes and actually makes a if there is an error on a kind of a database update, it actually commits to that like the previous database, and it doesn't continues upgrading the database. So it's a little bit confusing to be honest, but if you don't use the data stores and databases, I think we use in one or two automation tops, because as I said, if you use Google Sheets, technically you don't need this one. So commit, again, if you can come here and you read about it, it just stops the scenario and commits to all the changes. Make doesn't process the rest of the modules in the scenario flow, and the scenario actually ends as a successful status, so it stops here. But as I said, this is mostly for data stores and actually keeps the data previously one and commits to that one. Okay, so again, these are the top two that are kind of, I'll say, difficult to understand. The other three is the one that we use the most and that you should pay attention to it. So basically, let's start with the resume, and I'll tackle the other two, which are the most common ones. But let me just delete this one so you can see it. So the resume, basically what happens here, and I will even put it, let me put it here on the spreadsheet so you see it. So if you handle the error here, for example, and you put a resume, so basically what happened here is that with the resume, you can add a manual data, and it runs the module again. Okay, so imagine that, for example, this is basically like A versus B. So for example, if there is an error on an email, for example, because it didn't fetch it, or there is an error, instead of stopping, what you can do is, like, for example, just resume and put on the column saying email not found. Okay, so basically what happened is it will continue the automation but change the error to a specific manual input that you give. Okay, so this can be quite useful because, for example, if you are doing a lot of data, special, for example, on Google Sheets, and there is an error between, like, you have like 20 times running or 20 bundles to run, and there is like one error on the 10th, and it stops completely and doesn't continue all the other ones, kind of mess it up. But the resume is kind of helpful to, if you catch the error and you know that that error happens all the time in that spot, you can just change, okay, if there is an error, please change that specific cell or that specific data to a manual thing that you write here. Okay, in this case, I gave the example of email, so there is an error, doesn't fetch an email on like 20 bundles, and then the 10th, it will change the column email to email not found and continues to process all the data. And then on the 20th, doesn't find an email, it adds email not found on that one as well. Okay, so this is kind of useful for Google Sheets. We don't use super in a lot of modules, but it's kind of helpful. The top two that we use the most is ignore and I will say the break. Okay, and break is actually the one that we use the most, so I'll keep that one to the last. So basically, ignore is pretty straightforward. Is that it just ignores and continues. Okay, so basically this is quite helpful if there is an error from some data that it passed and you kind of like not super important for you, and you can still continue the automation, but instead of like stopping here because there was an error, you can just continue and ignoring the error. Okay, he actually says he ignores the error, the bundle doesn't continue the scenario flow, may process the rest of the bundles in the scenario flow normally. Okay, so for example, again, the same thing as the Google Sheet. If you have 20 lines that you want to go one by one and there is an error in one of the lines, it ignores the error and continues the bundles. Okay, so it doesn't change any manual data, it just ignores. Okay, so for example, if you want to have ChatGPT to make a first personal line in every single line of Google Sheet, but you don't mind if there is one that it doesn't find the website for some reason, you just ignore and continues to fill out all the columns. Okay, so this is quite useful if you see an error over and over again and you just don't want to stop the automation. This is kind of cool. So this is one of the one that we use the most. And the last one is the break one. Okay, so this is the one that we actually use the most, and we use mainly actually for external apps. So for example, Google Sheet, ChatGPT as well, Perplexity, Claude, any API module, we actually use this one. So basically what break does is that it is when there is an error. For example, this happens a lot with API. So for example, imagine that you are using a lot of ChatGPT and you actually max out the number of more tokens that you can use, right? Normally those APIs have like you need to wait like 5 minutes or you need to wait like a certain amount of time to run again. Okay, so instead of giving an error, you have to come here, you have to close, run again, and so on. This break, what happens is makes a pause. So it pauses for a certain amount of time and tries again. Okay, so this is really helpful because it actually can basically solve most of the errors that you have on Make. Because, for example, in this case, as you can see here, what we say is that just try 3 times. So if there is an error on Google Sheets, it will stop for 15 minutes, and every 15 minutes you will try 3 times. If the error continues 3 times, then it will send you an email and stops the automation. But for some reason, if the app starts to work again, it actually continues and you don't even know about it. Okay, so this is really helpful to use because you can put like 50 minutes, you can put to like even like 60 minutes. So for example, if there is an error, just try next hour, and you can do this by actually reading, for example, ChatGPT APIs and all the APIs, and you see that there is a module, for example, imagine Buffer, which is a scheduling app, and they say, hey, you cannot only run 20 times per minute, and you know that you will use more than 20 times a minute. You can say, hey, wait 1 more minute or 5 minutes and then try again, and you can change the number of attempts. We all normally put it 3, okay, and automatically completes the execution. Is true, you can say like that because it continue all the way until completes. But this is really helpful, guys, and we use this break on all of the apps. Okay, if you put another one here, for example, Slack, it can change some stuff. So I will add an error here as well. So if you check many of our automations, we have a lot of these here on the top because we use the break a lot. Okay, because especially for external apps that you're connecting, this is really helpful. Okay, it just takes 1 minute to set up. You set it up, okay, and don't forget to come here. I think here on the scenario settings, you need to accept here, okay, allow storing incomplete executions. Of course, when you save it, and I think you save it, it will need, okay, it says here, this directive requires storing of incomplete execution to enable. So when you are going to save, it will tell you that you need to activate these functions. So you need to come here on the settings and always activate allow storing, okay, because it allows to store, and as you can see, the red bubble here just disappear. So now they are working just fine, okay, but just put that on the settings. And again, this is quite helpful, okay, because any problem with APIs, any problem running some of the modules, it will try 3 times or more if you want, and for a certain period of time. Okay, so this is actually probably the handler that we use in every single automation, or 90% of the automations. Then they ignore, then they resume, and then the last two, commit and roll back. We barely use it. I think we use it 1 time to test it out, but we never use it because we don't store most of our data here on Make. Okay, guys, so I hope this is kind of more like clarify for you, and try and start using all these errors because this is quite helpful. It will prevent you from getting stuff blocked and stopped, and you have to go back again and run it again. So yeah, so this is basically one of the basics of Make, but you still need to know it in order to improve your automation. This is a great way to improve it. And as I said, last case scenario on error handling, you can actually, if I delete this one, but this I'll probably let you to another video, is that if you handle the error, you can actually choose an app and continue. So for example, if there is an error here on the Google Sheet and you want to send a Slack message, you can actually say add error handling and choose Slack instead of one of the errors. And you click here, show more, and says send me create a message, for example. Okay, so these ones without color are error handlers. So you can also do this. So if there is an error in one of the apps, you can go and continue to another flow of, because you can add another one and another one. So you can actually continue with other automation. Normally we use Slack and email to get like a notification that there was an error. So that's the main one that we use, but you can do other stuff just for you to know it, that is possible. But most of the times the error handlers are these 5 here. Okay, so hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is just one of the basics that will be on our community, and any questions you may have, feel free to comment below. All the information will be below as well, all the links, all the resources that we talk on these videos as usual, and I hope to see you on the next video. Thank you.